All right, so today we're going to be doing a deep dive into some pretty fascinating stuff,
Oh, yeah.
all about civic participation and responsibility.
Hmm.
You know, that thing we always hear about,
Right.
but maybe don't always fully grasp. You know what I mean?
It's true. Civic duty, that term gets thrown around a lot.
It does.
But what's always interesting to me is just how much deeper it goes
Yeah.
than just knowing the Pledge of Allegiance or.
Right, like I get that voting is important.
Right.
But looking at all this info we've got here,
Uh-huh.
it suggests it's just the tip of the iceberg.
Exactly. Think about like the Montgomery bus boycott, for example.
Oh, okay.
That was way more than just people casting ballots.
Right.
I mean, citizens were putting their lives and their livelihoods on the line to force change.
Okay, so that's a powerful example.
Yeah.
But are we saying, like, every act of civic duty has to be some grand historical gesture?
Oh, not at all.
Okay.
But it does highlight that being informed is absolutely crucial.
Right.
You can't effectively participate if you don't understand, like, the issues or the players, the systems at play.
So it's about being a savvy citizen,
Yeah.
not just a well-meaning one.
Precisely. And that's where things like media literacy come in.
Okay.
It's not just about, like, reading a lot.
Right.
It's about reading critically.
Hold on. Break that down for me a little bit.
Yeah.
What does reading critically even mean?
Well, it means recognizing that every source has a perspective, a bias.
Okay.
Think of it like this. You wouldn't trust a restaurant review from the owner of the restaurant, right?
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Right.
So I need to be like my own fact checker almost.
Yes.
Looking at who is saying what and why.
Exactly. Look for evidence. Look for corroboration from multiple sources.
Okay.
And be especially wary of anything that confirms your existing beliefs a little too neatly. That's where we could fall into these echo chambers and filter bubbles.
Wow. So informed citizenry is almost like detective work in a way.
Really like that. You know,
Yeah.
you're gathering clues. You're piecing together the truth from a jumble of information.
Right.
And speaking of systems,
Yeah.
have you ever looked into how electoral districts are drawn up?
You mean like the shapes on the maps?
Yeah.
During election season?
Uh-huh.
I vaguely remember that from school.
Well, that's gerrymandering.
Okay.
And it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Politicians can actually sometimes manipulate those district lines to benefit their party.
Wow.
And it can potentially skew election results.
Seriously?
Mm-hmm.
So my vote might not even count the way I think it does?
Well, it's a complex issue.
Yeah.
There are arguments on both sides.
Sure.
But the point is, understanding these deeper mechanics helps you see beyond just the surface of
Totally.
elections.
So informed citizenry isn't just about knowing who to vote for.
Right.
It's about understanding the whole game board.
You're getting it.
Yeah.
And it's not about becoming like a political expert overnight or anything.
Right.
It's about that ongoing curiosity, the willingness to dig deeper than just the headlines.
Okay, I'm starting to see why you called this stuff fascinating.
Yeah.
But how does all this connect to actually making a difference, you know?
Right.
Like one person being super informed.
Yeah.
Does that really change anything?
Well, that's where we get to the different levels of civic engagement.
Okay.
It's like this. Imagine a community group is trying to get a new park built.
Okay, I'm picturing like a bake sale.
Yeah.
A petition going around.
Right. Those are great starting points.
Yeah.
But now imagine someone in that group also understands the city budget process.
Okay.
They know which officials to lobby, and they can write really compelling proposals.
Ah, so they become like a powerhouse almost.
Exactly.
Turning good intentions into real action.
Exactly. And that same principle scales up.
Okay.
If you're informed about state-level environmental policy, for example,
Mm-hmm.
you're better equipped to advocate for change there.
So it's like leveling up your civic skills almost.
Yeah.
From neighborhood concerns to statewide issues and beyond?
You got it. And this ties back to something we touched on earlier,
Okay.
voting.
Right. The classic civic duty.
Yeah.
But you're saying it's not just about showing up at the polls.
Think of voting as the final boss battle in a video game.
Okay.
You got to level up your knowledge and skills
Right.
to defeat it effectively.
So researching candidates,
Yeah.
understanding their platforms,
Mhm.
seeing how their positions align with my values.
Yes.
That's all part of the leveling up
Yes.
before I cast my vote.
Precisely. And don't underestimate the power of local elections.
Okay.
Your city council school board,
Yeah.
they have a huge impact on your daily life.
Wow. Okay, so it's not just about the big presidential races. Every election matters.
Every election matters.
But being informed takes effort. I
Yeah.
won't lie.
Yeah.
Why should I bother?
because the alternative is being swept along by the current, influenced by whoever shouts the loudest
Right.
or whoever manipulates the information best.
You're saying it's about taking control,
Yes.
not just of my vote,
Yeah.
but of my whole understanding of how things work.
Exactly. And that's empowering.
Okay.
When you're truly informed, you're not just reacting, you're shaping the conversation.
Okay. That's a pretty compelling argument
Yeah.
for doing my homework as a citizen.
Yeah.
But I gotta admit, this whole informed citizenry thing feels like a pretty high bar, you know?
It's a journey, not a destination.
Okay, so where do we even begin?
Yeah.
What's step one for someone feeling overwhelmed by all this?
That's a great question, and one we'll definitely get into more next time.
Yep.
But for now, perhaps just ask yourself this.
Okay.
What issue, even a small local one,
Mm-hmm.
makes you go, oof, someone should do something about that?
Ooh, I like where this is going.
Yeah.
You're saying pick a point of personal passion, and that's my entry point to becoming more engaged.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be saving the world on day one.
Right.
Start with what you care about and use that as a springboard to learn more.
Yeah.
Get involved. And maybe even surprise yourself with how much impact you can have.
Mm-hmm.
So picking up on that idea of starting small,
Yeah.
sometimes we overlook how directly civic engagement can impact our quality of life.
Yeah, it's easy to think of it as this big abstract thing.
Right.
But I'm guessing you've got some examples of that connection playing out in real life.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Look at what's happening in some cities with community gardens.
No, yeah.
What starts as like a way to grow fresh food can transform a vacant lot, reduce crime, even build social ties between neighbors.
Okay, so something seemingly simple can have these ripple effects,
Yeah,
making the neighborhood safer and more connected.
exactly. And when people feel safer, they're more likely to be out and about.
Right.
They're supporting local businesses. They're attending community events.
Mm-hmm.
It's a virtuous cycle.
It sounds like that sense of belonging is a big part of it.
Yeah.
It's not just about fixing potholes.
Right.
It's about feeling invested in where you live.
And that feeling of investment makes people more likely to participate in local government.
Right.
They'll speak up at town halls. They'll hold elected officials accountable.
Mm-hmm.
It's a two-way street.
This reminds me of something we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
The importance of diverse voices.
Yes.
The more people feel like they belong,
Right.
the more perspectives get brought to the table.
You're hitting on a crucial point.
Uh-huh.
Imagine a city council meeting where everyone looks and thinks the same way.
Right.
Chances are they're going to miss some crucial angles.
Right, like that saying about needing to walk a mile in someone else's shoes to
Exactly.
understand their perspective.
Yeah, but how do we ensure that everyone feels welcome to share their voice?
Right.
Especially those who've historically been marginalized or silenced.
That's where things get really interesting.
It is.
It's not enough to just say, come speak up.
Right.
I need to actively create spaces
Yeah.
where people feel safe to share,
Yes.
even if their views are unpopular.
Precisely. And that ties into the idea of media literacy we discussed earlier.
Mm.
If we're constantly bombarded with information that just reinforces existing biases,
Yeah.
it's a lot harder to empathize with those who hold different views.
It's like those echo chambers we talked about.
Yes.
If I'm only hearing from people who agree with me, it's easy to forget that there are other legitimate viewpoints out there.
Exactly.
Mm.
So media literacy helps us break out of those echo chambers
Right.
and engage with a wider range of perspectives.
Okay.
But it's not just about consuming information differently.
Uh-huh.
It's also about being mindful of how we participate in these online discussions.
Oh, that's a good point. It's
Yeah.
easy to get caught up in the heat of the moment and forget there's a human being on the other side of the screen.
It's like that old saying, you catch more flies with honey than with vinegar.
Right.
If we approach these online discussions with respect and a willingness to listen,
Yeah.
even when we disagree,
Uh-huh.
we're more likely to have a productive exchange.
And that kind of respectful dialogue is essential for a healthy democracy, right?
Absolutely. It's the foundation for finding common ground,
Yeah.
building consensus, moving forward together as a society.
Okay, so we've talked about the importance of diverse voices and
Yeah.
respectful dialogue.
Mhm.
But how does all this connect to the more formal aspects of civic participation,
Yeah.
like voting?
Well, voting is still the cornerstone of our democracy.
Right.
It's the mechanism by which we choose our representatives and hold them accountable.
Right, but earlier you were comparing it to a video game boss battle.
Yeah.
Are you saying that just showing up to vote isn't enough?
Well, it's a start.
Okay.
But if you're going into that boss battle without leveling up your knowledge and skills,
Right.
you're probably going to get defeated.
So I need to do my research,
Yes.
understand the candidates and the issues, and make sure my vote is informed and intentional.
Exactly. And that research should include Not just the candidates themselves,
Okay.
but the systems they operate within.
Mm.
For example, how does campaign finance work?
Right.
Where do these candidates get their money? And who might that be influencing? You know?
Ooh, that's a really good point. It's easy to focus on the candidates' personalities and sound bites,
Right.
but understanding the money trail can reveal a lot about their priorities.
And remember, your vote isn't just about choosing a candidate.
Okay.
It's also about shaping the direction of our government and our society.
Hmm.
Every election is a chance to decide what kind of future we want to build.
Okay. That's a pretty inspiring way to think about it.
Yeah.
But, not everyone feels that same sense of inspiration about voting.
Yeah.
Some people are disillusioned with the system.
Mm.
They feel like their vote doesn't matter, or they're just plain overwhelmed by the whole process.
That's a valid concern.
Yeah.
And it highlights why civic engagement goes beyond just voting.
Okay.
If we want more people to feel empowered to participate in our democracy,
Right.
we need to address those feelings of disillusionment and make the process more accessible and engaging.
So what are some ways to do that?
Yeah.
How do we rekindle that sense of civic spirit and make people feel like their voices truly matter?
That's a great question and one we'll delve into in our final segment.
Okay.
But for now, I want to leave you with this thought.
Okay.
If you could change one thing about the way our democracy works, what would it be?
Wow. That's a big question.
It is.
But it's a good one.
Yeah.
It forces us to think critically about the system and imagine ways to make it better. So we've been talking about how to make our democracy, more vibrant and engaging,
Right.
especially for those who feel disillusioned or overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Where do we even begin to tackle that challenge?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Because one of the biggest hurdles to civic engagement is simply knowing where to start.
Right?
It's like staring at a giant buffet
Mm-hmm.
with all these delicious options, but feeling paralyzed by choice.
Yeah, I totally get that. You're fired up to make a difference, but then it's like,
Yeah.
do I join a protest?
Right.
Do I call my senator?
Yeah.
Do I start a blog?
Exactly.
It's a lot.
So rather than getting bogged down and trying to find the perfect action,
Uh-huh.
maybe we need to kind of reframe it a bit.
Okay.
Think of civic engagement as a muscle,
Okay.
something that you build up over time.
I like that analogy. So instead of a marathon on day one,
Right.
it's about finding those small reps
Exactly.
that I can fit into my daily life.
Precisely. And those reps can be surprisingly simple.
Okay.
What if for like 1 week,
Uh-huh.
you just committed to reading one local news article every day?
Mm-hmm.
Not even a whole newspaper.
Right.
Just one story about your community.
Okay. I can definitely handle that.
Right.
But how does that fit into the whole making a difference thing?
Because knowledge is power, right?
Right.
Once you're aware of what's happening in your own backyard,
Yeah.
you might notice a problem that sparks their passion. Maybe it's underfunded schools. Maybe it's a lack of affordable housing.
So that daily article becomes like my intel gathering
Yes.
as a citizen.
Yes.
Helping me figure out where I want to focus my energy.
You got it. And then that small action can snowball.
Okay.
Maybe you share that article with a friend, you spark a conversation.
Me-
Maybe you attend a city council meeting about that issue.
Right.
Suddenly you're engaged.
It's like that saying, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
Exactly.
But what about the folks who are like disillusioned?
Yep.
The ones who think the system is rigged and their voice doesn't matter?
That's where we need to get creative.
Okay.
One thing that a lot of our sources highlight is the power of storytelling.
Mm.
Think about the impact of movements like Me Too or Black Lives Matter.
Right.
They harness personal stories to expose injustice and demand change.
Right. Those movements changed the conversation on a national scale.
They did.
But can storytelling work on like a smaller local level?
Absolutely. Imagine a group of residents are concerned about pollution from a nearby factory.
Okay.
Instead of just like presenting dry data at a town hall,
Yeah.
they share stories of how the pollution impacts their families, their health, their livelihoods.
Suddenly it's not just an abstract problem.
Right.
It's real people's lives being affected.
Exactly.
Yep.
And that kind of storytelling can be incredibly effective in mobilizing others to get involved.
Right.
It helps people connect with the issue on an emotional level.
Okay, so we've got small reps to build the habit.
Uh-huh.
We've got storytelling to ignite passion.
Yeah.
What else can help overcome that feeling of like my voice doesn't matter?
This might sound counterintuitive,
Okay.
but sometimes focusing on like hyper-local issues can actually be more empowering than trying to tackle these huge national problems.
So isn't it more impactful to, say, fight for climate change
Right.
than to get a stop sign installed on your street?
It depends.
Okay, okay.
Imagine you spend months petitioning for that stop sign.
Mhm.
You're attending neighborhood meetings.
Yeah.
You're rallying your neighbors.
Yeah.
Then one day that stop sign goes up.
Okay, I'm seeing where you're going with this.
Yeah.
You've seen tangible proof that your actions made a difference, like
Exactly.
in your own community.
That sense of accomplishment can be incredibly motivating.
Right.
It proves that you have the power to affect change,
Uh-huh.
which can then inspire you to tackle those bigger issues.
It's like leveling up your civic skills.
Yes.
Starting with something manageable and building from there.
Precisely. And it's not just about individual empowerment.
Okay.
It's about collective action.
Right.
When people see their neighbors working together to improve their community,
Uh-huh.
it builds a sense of shared purpose, and it strengthens those social bonds.
It creates a sense of we did this.
Exactly.
Not just me as an individual, but us as a community.
Exactly. And that kind of shared success can be contagious.
Yeah.
It inspires others to get involved, and it contributes to a more vibrant and engaged citizenry overall.
Mm-hmm. This has been such an eye-opening conversation.
It has.
We've covered so much ground,
Well, yeah.
from media literacy and gerrymandering to storytelling and hyper-local activism.
Yeah.
It feels like we've unpacked this whole toolkit for
Yeah.
effective civic engagement.
And the best part is this toolkit is constantly evolving.
Right.
As our world changes, so too do the ways we can participate in shaping it.
So if someone is listening to this and feeling inspired to get more involved,
Yeah.
but still maybe a little unsure where to start, what's your advice?
My advice is to follow your curiosity.
Okay.
What issues spark your passion?
Mm.
What problems in your community make you go, this needs to change?
Yeah.
Start there.
I love that. Start with what lights you up,
Yeah.
and then use that as fuel to learn, connect, and take action.
Exactly. Remember, civic engagement is a journey, not a destination.
Mm-hmm.
There will be bumps along the way. There will be moments of frustration
Right.
and times when you just feel like giving up.
Yeah.
But the important thing is to keep going, keep learning,
Right.
and keep believing that your voice matters.
That's a perfect note to end on.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your insights
Of course.
and for reminding us that we all have the power to make a difference.
It's been my pleasure. And to our listeners, remember, you are the heart of our democracy.
Mm.
Get out there, get involved, and make your voice heard.